Dr. Elena Martinez stood at the window of the starship Aurora and looked out at the strange world below. The planet was covered in tall silver towers that seemed to bend and twist like living things. Purple clouds drifted between the buildings, and she could see lights moving in patterns she had never seen before. "Are you ready for this?" asked Captain Ryan Brooks as he walked up beside her. His uniform was clean and pressed, but Elena could see the worry in his eyes. "As ready as anyone can be for meeting aliens?" Elena said with a small smile. She had spent 3 years learning everything she could about the Zephyrians, but she still felt nervous. The ship's communication system made a soft beeping sound. "Captain Brooks, we are getting a message from the planet," said the voice of Lieutenant Dan Parker from the bridge. "Put it through," Ryan said. A strange musical voice filled the room. The words were translated by their computer, but the tone was unlike anything Elena had heard before. "Human vessel Aurora, you are cleared to land at Platform 7. Please follow the guidance lights." Elena watched as bright blue lights appeared in the air outside their ship. The lights formed a path that led down to the planet's surface. It was beautiful and impossible at the same time. "How do they make lights float in space like that?" Ryan asked. "I don't know," Elena admitted, "but I guess we're about to find out." The Aurora followed the lights down to a landing platform made of something that looked like glass, but felt solid under their feet. As they walked down the ship's ramp, Elena saw their first Zephyrian. The alien was tall and thin, with skin that changed color like oil on water. But what made Elena stare were its hands. The Zephyrian had 6 arms, and each arm ended in what looked like a bunch of tiny fingers that moved like grass in the wind. The fingers were so thin, Elena could barely see them. "Welcome to Zephyr Prime," the alien said. Its voice was like music, even through the translator. "I am Ambassador Kethter. I speak for the High Council." Captain Brooks stepped forward with his hand out. "Thank you for welcoming us. I'm Captain Ryan Brooks, and this is Dr. Elena Martinez. We're honored to be here." Elena watched in horror as Ryan reached out for a handshake. She had read about human greeting customs in her reports, but she had not thought about how it would look to the aliens. Kethter looked at Ryan's outstretched hand and jumped back as if he had seen a snake. The ambassador's skin turned a dark red color, and his thin fingers curled up tight. "What is that?" Kethter whispered. "What are those thick, crude things on the ends of your arms?" Ryan looked confused. He looked down at his hand, then back at the ambassador. "These are my hands. This is how humans greet each other." He wiggled his fingers. "We shake hands to show we're friends." The ambassador's color turned even darker. "You call those hands?" "They look like clubs." "How do you pick up anything with those fat stubs?" Elena felt her face get hot. She had known this first meeting would be important, but she had not expected it to go this badly, this fast. "Our hands work very well for us," she said, trying to keep her voice calm. "We can do many things with them." Kethter made a sound like music played backwards. "I am sorry, but I find that hard to believe. Your appendages are so thick and clumsy. Look at this." The ambassador held up one of his arms. His tiny fingers began to move, and Elena watched in amazement as they seemed to grab something from the air itself. The fingers twisted and pulled, and suddenly there was a small flower made of light floating above his palm. "This is how real hands work," Kethter said. "We can shape matter at the smallest level. We can build things from nothing but air and energy. What can you do with those crude tools?" Ryan looked at his hands again. Elena could see him getting angry, but she also saw something else. He was starting to doubt himself. "We can do lots of things," Ryan said, but his voice was not as strong as before. "Show me," Kethter said. Ryan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small metal tool. It was a simple wrench, the kind mechanics used to fix things. We use tools to help us work. This wrench can turn bolts and fix machines. The ambassador looked at the wrench like it was something dirty. You need a separate tool for such a simple task? We can reshape metal with our minds and hands working together. We do not need crude instruments. Elena watched as more Zephyrians gathered around them. They all had the same thin, moving fingers, and they all seemed to be staring at the humans. Hands with something like disgust. Perhaps, Kefter said slowly, we should postpone this meeting. I need to discuss with the High Council whether beings with such primitive appendages can truly be considered intelligent. Elena felt like she had been hit in the stomach. 3 years of preparation, and it was all falling apart because of a handshake. Ambassador, she said quickly, please give us a chance. We may be different from you, but we have traveled between the stars. We have built great cities and created art and music. Our hands may look different, but they have built everything we are. Kefter's fingers moved like he was thinking. I will consider your words. But you must understand, in all of our travels through the galaxy, we have never encountered a species with such unfortunate appendages. It is disturbing. The ambassador turned and glided away, his thin fingers still moving in patterns Elena could not understand. The other Zephyrians followed, leaving the humans standing alone on the platform. Well, Ryan said after a long moment, that could have gone better. Elena looked down at her own hands. They had never seemed ugly to her before, but now she found herself wondering if the Zephyrians were right. Were human hands really so crude and primitive? What do we do now? Asked Lieutenant Parker, who had been watching from the ship's ramp. We wait, Elena said, and we hope they give us another chance. But as she watched the Zephyrians disappear into their impossible city, Elena wondered if their mission was already over before it had truly begun. 3 months had passed since the disastrous first meeting. Dr. Elena Martinez walked through the halls of the Zephyrian Research Center, trying to ignore the stares and whispers that followed her everywhere. The other humans in the cultural exchange program had similar experiences. They were treated like children, or worse, like animals in a zoo. Commander Jake Sullivan met her at the main entrance. His face looked tired, and Elena could see the frustration in his eyes. How did your assignment go today? Elena asked. Jake shook his head. They had me sorting rocks by color. Rocks, Elena. I'm a military commander with 20 years of experience, and they have me doing what their children do for fun. Elena understood his anger. She had spent the morning being shown how to hold a simple tool, while Zephyrian younglings demonstrated things that seemed like magic. Their thin fingers could reach into objects and change them from the inside. They could make metal flow like water and turn air into solid shapes. At least you got to touch something, said Dr. Amy Chun as she joined them. They won't even let me near the real equipment. Yesterday, I watched a Zephyrian child build a computer by arranging molecules with his bare hands. When I asked if I could try, they looked at me like I had suggested juggling fire. The worst part is the names they call us, added pilot Tony Rodriguez. Thick fingers, club hands, stub digits. I heard one of them say that humans are proof that evolution sometimes makes mistakes. Elena felt a familiar anger rise in her chest. She had heard all these names and worse. The Zephyrians had created an entire vocabulary just to describe how inadequate human hands were. Maybe we should just go home, Tony said quietly. This whole exchange program is pointless. They think we're barely intelligent. No, Elena said firmly. We're not giving up. There has to be something we can do to prove ourselves. Jake looked doubtful. Like what? Everything we try to do, they do better. Their hands are like precision tools that can work at the molecular level. What can we possibly show them that would be impressive? Elena didn't have an answer, but she refused to accept defeat. That afternoon, she visited the Zephyrian workshop where the younglings learned to use their abilities. She watched as a young Zephyrian named Zexley built a miniature sculpture that floated in the air and changed colors. "It's beautiful," Elena said through her translator. Zexley looked up at her with large, curious eyes. "Thank you, human Elena. But I am still learning. My fingers are not fully developed yet." Elena looked at the sculpture, which was more complex than anything she had ever seen. "Not fully developed? But this is amazing. My teacher says I am clumsy," Zexley said sadly. "I cannot yet shape individual atoms. I can only work with groups of molecules." Elena stared at the young alien. What the Zephyrians considered clumsy would be considered miraculous by human standards. She was beginning to understand just how different their species really were. "Can I ask you something?" Elena said. "What do you think of human hands?" Zexley's skin shifted to a pale blue color, which Elena had learned meant embarrassment. "I am sorry, human Elena. I do not wish to be rude. Please, I want to know." The young Zephyrian looked around to make sure no adults were listening. "They are very strange, so thick and hard. How do you feel anything with them? And you only have 5 fingers on each hand. How do you hold complex objects?" Elena held up her hand and wiggled her fingers. "We use them differently than you do. We grab things and squeeze them. We can hold tight to objects so they don't fall." "But that seems so violent," Zexley said. "What if you squeeze too hard and break something?" "Sometimes we do break things," Elena admitted, "but usually we're careful. My teacher says that. Human hands are proof that your species never learned to work with matter properly. He says you had to invent tools because your hands are too crude to do real work." Elena felt that familiar sting of insult, but she also noticed something else. "Zexley, can you pick up that metal bar over there?" The young Zephyrian looked at a thick piece of metal lying on a nearby table. "Of course." He reached out with his thin fingers and tried to grasp it. His fingers wrapped around the metal, but when he tried to lift it, they simply bent and could not get a grip. "It's too heavy," Zexley said, "and too smooth. My fingers cannot find a good hold." Elena walked over and picked up the metal bar easily. It was heavy, but her human hands had no trouble gripping it and lifting it over her head. Zexley's eyes went wide. "How did you do that? Human hands are stronger than yours," Elena said. "We can grip things tightly and lift heavy objects. But why would you need to do that?" Zexley asked. Elena thought about it. "Sometimes things are heavy. Sometimes you need to hold on tight so you don't drop something important. Sometimes you need to push or pull with great force." The young Zephyrian looked confused. "But we can reshape matter. If something is too heavy, we make it lighter. If we need to move something, we change its properties." "What if you can't change it?" Elena asked. "What if the material is too hard or too complex to reshape?" Zexley's skin turned a darker blue. "That doesn't happen. Everything can be reshaped if you know how." But Elena could see doubt in the young alien's eyes. She had planted a seed of an idea, and she hoped it would grow. That evening, Elena met with the other humans in their shared quarters. The building was nice, but it felt more like a prison than a home. They were not allowed to leave without escorts, and they were not permitted to touch most Zephyrian technology. "I learned something interesting today," Elena said. She told them about her conversation with Zexley and how the young Zephyrian couldn't lift the metal bar. "So what?" Jake said. "They don't need to lift heavy things. They just reshape them." "But what if they can't reshape something?" Elena asked. "What if there's a situation where their molecular manipulation doesn't work?" Amy looked thoughtful. "That's an interesting question. Their abilities seem to work on most materials, but every technology has limits." I've been watching their transportation systems, Tony said. They're incredibly advanced, but they're also incredibly delicate. Everything is designed to work perfectly under ideal conditions. What do you mean? Elena asked. I mean their vehicles can barely handle rough weather. Their tools break if you look at them wrong. Their entire civilization is built on the assumption that everything will work exactly as designed. Elena felt a spark of hope. So what happens when something doesn't work as designed? They fix it, Jake said. They reshape it with their hands. But what if they can't? Elena pressed. What if the situation is too dangerous or too chaotic for their precise manipulation? The humans looked at each other. They had all been thinking the same thing, but none of them had wanted to say it out loud. You're thinking about what we're good at, Amy said slowly. The things that the Zephyrians can't do. Exactly, Elena said. They think our hands are primitive because they're different. But different doesn't mean worse. It means we're good at different things. The question is, Jake said, will we ever get a chance to prove it? Elena looked out the window at the impossible city of New Zephyr. Somewhere out there, she hoped, was a problem that would require the crude, clumsy, primitive hands of humanity to solve. The alarm started at dawn. Elena Martinez woke to the sound of sirens echoing through the halls of the research center. She had never heard Zephyrian alarms before, but the urgent, musical wailing told her something was very wrong. She rushed to the main communication room where the other humans were already gathering. Commander Jake Sullivan was trying to understand what the Zephyrian technicians were saying, but their translators were having trouble with the rapid, panicked speech. What's happening? Elena asked. Some kind of accident, Jake said. Something. About the mining colonies in the asteroid belt. Dr. Amy Chun was watching the main display screen, which showed images of twisted metal and floating debris. It looks like there was an explosion, she said. Or maybe a solar flare. A Zephyrian technician turned to them. His skin was flashing rapid colors, which Elena had learned meant extreme stress. Solar storm, he said in broken human language. Very bad. Mining station damaged. Many trapped. Elena felt her heart sink. She had read about the Zephyrian mining operations. They were beautiful, delicate structures that floated in the asteroid belt, extracting rare minerals with the same molecular precision the aliens used for everything else. How many? Jake asked. Thousands, the technician said. Maybe 10,000 workers. Equipment broken. Cannot get out. Pilot Tony Rodriguez pointed at the screen. Look at that debris. It's all rough and jagged. Looks like the solar flare melted some of the station's structure, and then it cooled into a twisted mess. Elena studied the images more carefully. She could see that the elegant mining equipment had been turned into a maze of sharp, irregular metal. It blocked the escape routes and trapped the workers inside. What's the plan? She asked. How are they going to rescue the miners? The technician's colors got even more agitated. Problem very bad. Our tools not work on this metal. Solar storm changed molecular structure. Cannot reshape. Cannot move. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. The Zephyrians' greatest strength had become their greatest weakness. Their tools were designed to work with materials they could manipulate at the molecular level. But the solar storm had changed the debris into something their delicate fingers couldn't handle. Have you tried cutting tools? Amy asked. Yes, the technician said. All broken. This metal too hard, too rough. Our equipment too delicate. Elena looked at the images again. The debris was indeed rough and jagged, but it was still just metal. Tough, hardened metal, but nothing that couldn't be moved with the right tools and enough force. Where's the mining station? She asked. In asteroid belt, the technician said. Very dangerous. High radiation. Very cold. Equipment must be very strong to work there. Elena felt a spark of understanding. And your equipment isn't strong enough? The technician's colors shifted to what Elena recognized as shame. Our tools very precise, very advanced, but not strong, not made for crude work. What about robots? Tony asked. Can't you send machines to clear the debris? Robots also broken, the technician said. Solar storm damaged all delicate systems. Only simple, strong machines still work. Elena looked at Jake, Amy, and Tony. She could see the same realization in their eyes. This was the moment they had been waiting for, without knowing it. What about asking for help? Elena said carefully. Maybe someone else has equipment that could work. The technician looked confused. Who? Zephyrian's most advanced species in galaxy. If we cannot solve problem, no one can. What about humans? Jake asked quietly. The technician's skin turned a color Elena had never seen before. It was like purple mixed with silver, and it seemed to ripple with disbelief. Humans? But your hands are too crude. Your tools too simple. How could you help? With such complex problem? Elena felt the old anger rise in her chest, but she pushed it down. This wasn't about hurt feelings anymore. This was about saving lives. Maybe our crude tools are exactly what you need, she said. Before the technician could respond, another alarm sounded. This one was different, more urgent. A new voice came over the communication system, speaking so fast that the translators couldn't keep up. What's that? Amy asked. The technician's colors went completely white, which Elena had learned meant terror. Oxygen running low, he whispered. Miners have maybe 12 hours before air runs out. Elena felt her stomach drop. 12 hours to clear enough debris to create escape routes for 10,000 trapped workers. And the Zephyrians couldn't do it because their tools were too delicate for the rough, hardened metal. We need to contact the colonial administrator. Jake said, we need to offer our help. They will not listen, the technician said. Humans cannot do what Zephyrians cannot do. Maybe we can't do what you do, Elena said. But maybe we can do what you can't do. The technician stared at her with his large, dark eyes. What do you mean? Elena held up her hands. You keep saying our hands are crude and primitive. But maybe that's exactly what this job needs. Maybe you need crude, primitive tools to handle crude, primitive problems. The technician's colors shifted through several shades Elena didn't recognize. You think your thick fingers could move metal that our precise tools cannot handle? I think, Elena said, that there's more than one way to solve a problem. And maybe this time, the crude way is the right way. The technician was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. I will contact Administrator Vexthen, but I do not think he will listen. He believes human hands are the worst in the galaxy. Then we'll have to prove him wrong, Jake said. Elena looked at the screen showing the trapped miners. Somewhere in that twisted maze of metal were 10,000 beings who were going to die unless someone could do the impossible. The Zephyrians had tried their way and failed. Now it was time to try the human way. How long would it take to get to the mining station? She asked. 4 hours by fastest ship, the technician said. But you cannot survive in asteroid belt. Too dangerous for crude biology. We have survival suits, Tony said, and we have experience working in dangerous conditions. The technician's colors shifted to something like hope mixed with disbelief. You would really try? Even though you might die? Elena looked at her fellow humans. They all nodded. Those are 10,000 lives, she said. We have to try. The technician stared at them for another long moment. Then his colors shifted to a bright, pure blue. I will contact Administrator Vexthen immediately. Maybe your crude hands can do what our advanced ones cannot. Elena felt a mixture of fear and determination. In 4 hours, they would find out if human hands were as useless as the Zephyrians believed. or if sometimes the crude way was exactly what the situation required. The rescue ship Stellar Wind shook as it entered the asteroid belt. Elena Martinez gripped her seat and watched the twisted remains of the mining station grow larger on the screen. Up close, it looked even worse than the images had shown. The elegant Zephyrian architecture had been turned into a nightmare of sharp, melted metal. "Holy cow," said Pete Davis, the mechanical engineer who had joined their team. "That's not just damaged, that's completely destroyed." Administrator Vexthen's voice came through the communication system. His tone was desperate, but Elena could still hear the doubt in his words. "Human team, we have cleared you for approach. But I must warn you, this debris is unlike anything we have encountered. It has been hardened by the solar storm to a degree. That makes it nearly impossible to manipulate." "Nearly impossible for you," Commander Jake Sullivan said quietly. "But maybe not for us." Elena looked at their team. Besides herself, Jake, and Pete, they had brought Maria Santos, a construction worker who specialized in demolition, and Ben Carter, a medic who had experience working in dangerous conditions. They were all wearing heavy-duty spacesuits that looked clumsy compared to the elegant Zephyrian equipment. "Life support shows we have 6 hours of air," Elena said. "The miners have maybe 8 hours left. We need to work fast." The ship docked at what remained of the mining station's main platform. Elena could see Zephyrian rescue workers floating nearby in their delicate suits, their thin fingers moving helplessly against the twisted metal. "The main problem is here," Vexthen said, pointing to a massive chunk of debris that blocked the primary escape route. "This metal has been molecularly altered by the solar storm. We cannot reshape it, and our cutting tools simply break against it." Elena examined the debris. It was indeed rough and jagged, but it was still just metal. Tough metal, but nothing that couldn't be moved with the right approach. "Pete," she said, "what do you think?" Pete Davis pulled out a device that looked primitive compared to Zephyrian equipment. It was a simple scanner that measured density and structural integrity. "It's hard, but it's not impossible. We just need to approach it differently." "What do you mean?" asked one of the Zephyrian workers. "You've been trying to cut through it or reshape it," Pete said. "But sometimes the best way to move something isn't to destroy it. Sometimes you just need to push it out of the way." The Zephyrian workers' colors shifted to confusion. "Push it? But it weighs thousands of tons. How could anyone push such a massive object?" Maria Santos stepped forward. She was carrying a set of tools that looked crude compared to Zephyrian equipment, but Elena knew they were exactly what the situation required. "You don't push the whole thing," Maria said. "You find the weak points and apply force where it will do the most good." Elena watched as Maria examined the debris. Her human hands, protected by thick gloves, ran along the surface of the metal. She was feeling for stress points, weak spots where the right pressure could cause the whole structure to shift. "Here," Maria said, pointing to a place where 2 pieces of debris had melted together. "If we can break this connection, the whole upper section will pivot out of the way." "But how?" asked the Zephyrian worker. "Our tools cannot cut through this material." Maria smiled and pulled out a device that made the Zephyrians step back in alarm. It was a hydraulic jack, a simple tool that used pressurized fluid to create enormous force. "Sometimes you don't need to cut," she said. "Sometimes you just need to push really, really hard." Elena felt a surge of pride as Maria positioned the jack at the weak point in the debris. The Zephyrians watched in amazement as the crude human tool began to apply pressure to the hardened metal. "It's working," Pete said, as his scanner showed the stress patterns changing. "The connection is starting to crack." With a sound like thunder, the debris shifted. The massive chunk of metal that had blocked the escape route pivoted away, creating a passage large enough for the trapped miners to escape. "Impossible," whispered Vexthan. How did you do that? Leverage, Elena said. We found the right place to apply force, and we applied it. Sometimes the simple solution is the best solution, but their work was far from over. The passage was clear, but it was also dangerous. Sharp edges of metal stuck out at angles that could tear the delicate Zephyrian suits. The miners would need help getting through safely. We need to clear a safe path, Ben Carter said. Those metal edges will cut right through their suits. Elena watched as Ben pulled out another tool the Zephyrians found disturbing. It was a simple metal file, designed to smooth rough edges. In Ben's hands, it became a precision instrument for making the passage safe. Your medic is filing metal by hand, one of the Zephyrian workers said in amazement. How can he be so precise with such crude tools? Practice, Elena said. And the right tool for the job. As Ben worked, Elena realized something important. The Zephyrians had been so focused on their advanced abilities that they had forgotten the value of simple, direct solutions. They could manipulate matter at the molecular level, but they had never learned to work with materials they couldn't control. The first group of miners is coming through, Jake reported. They're scared, but they're moving. Elena watched as the first Zephyrian miners emerged from the debris. Their thin fingers were shaking, and their skin colors showed extreme stress. But they were alive. How many more? She asked. About 9,000, Vexthan said. But there are other blocked passages. The main route is clear, but we need to open at least 3 more escape paths. Elena felt the weight of responsibility. They had proven that human methods could work, but they still had hours of dangerous work ahead of them. Pete, Maria, she said, we need to split up. Each blocked passage will need a different approach. I'll take the North Passage, Maria said. It looks like another job for the hydraulic jack. I'll handle the East Passage, Pete said. That one needs some careful demolition work. Elena looked at the remaining passages. The South Passage was completely filled with debris, but it was also the shortest route to the surface. Ben and I will take the South Passage. Jake, you coordinate with the Zephyrians and make sure the miners keep moving. As they separated, Elena felt a strange sense of confidence. For the first time since arriving on Zephyr Prime, she felt like the humans were doing what they were meant to do. The South Passage was indeed the most challenging. The debris was packed tight, and there was no obvious weak point to exploit. But Elena had an idea. Ben, she said, what if we don't try to move the debris? What if we go through it? Ben looked at the twisted metal. You mean drill through? Exactly. We don't need to clear the whole passage. We just need to create a tunnel big enough for the miners to crawl through. Elena pulled out the most primitive tool of all, a simple drill powered by a small motor. To the Zephyrians, it would have looked like a child's toy. But Elena knew it was exactly what they needed. This will take forever, Ben said. And the miners don't have forever. Then we work fast, Elena said, and we work smart. As Elena began drilling, she felt the satisfaction of using her hands the way they were meant to be used. Not for delicate manipulation, but for applying steady, persistent force. The drill bit into the hardened metal, creating a hole that grew larger with each passing minute. It's working, Ben said. The hole is big enough for a person to fit through. Elena looked at her work. It wasn't elegant or advanced, but it was effective. And sometimes that was all that mattered. Let's go save some lives, she said. 6 hours later, the last of the trapped miners emerged from the debris. Elena Martinez watched as the final group of Zephyrians floated to safety, their delicate suits intact and their lives saved. Her human hands were sore from gripping tools. Her back ached from crawling through tight spaces, and her arms were tired from hours of hard work. But she had never felt better. The final count is 10,247 miners rescued, Administrator Vex then announced. His voice carried a tone Elena had never heard from a Zephyrian before. It was respect. 0 casualties. All escape routes are now clear. Commander Jake Sullivan floated over to Elena. His face was dirty and his suit was scratched, but he was smiling. "We did it," he said. "We actually did it." Elena looked around at the rescue site. The twisted debris was still there, but now it had holes and passages cut through it. The work was not pretty or elegant, but it was effective. The Zephyrians had learned something important today about the value of crude, direct solutions. "Human. Team," came a new voice over the communication system. Elena recognized it as Ambassador Kefter, the alien who had been so horrified by their handshake months ago. "Please report to the main platform. The High Council wishes to speak with you." Elena felt a flutter of nervousness. The High Council was the most important group of leaders in Zephyrian society. She had never expected to meet them, especially not while wearing a dirty, scratched work suit. "Are we in trouble?" asked Maria Santos as they made their way to the platform. "I don't think so," Elena said. "But I guess we'll find out." The main platform had been cleared of debris and converted into a temporary meeting area. Elena was surprised to see not just the High Council, but hundreds of Zephyrians floating in the space around the platform. Many of them were miners who had been rescued, and their skin colors showed emotions. Elena was finally learning to read Doc Ambassador Kefter approach them first. His thin fingers were moving in patterns Elena now recognized as extreme embarrassment, mixed with gratitude. "Dr. Martinez," he said, his musical voice softer than Elena had ever heard it. "I owe you an apology. I owe all of you an apology." Elena looked at the ambassador with surprise. "What for?" "For my blindness," Kefter said. "For my arrogance. For failing to see that different does not mean inferior." The ambassador held up one of his arms, showing his thin, delicate fingers. "These hands can manipulate matter at the molecular level. They can create beauty and precision beyond what most species can imagine. But today, I learned that they are also limited." Elena watched as Kefter's fingers tried to grip a piece of the debris that had been cleared from the escape routes. His thin appendages could not get a solid hold on the rough, irregular surface. "Your hands," the ambassador continued, "are built for different purposes. They are built for strength, for endurance, for working with materials that resist manipulation. They are built for tasks that ours cannot perform." Dr. Amy Chun stepped forward. "We're not better than you," she said. "We're just different. Our hands are good at some things, and yours are good at others." "This is what we failed to understand," said another voice. Elena turned to see a Zephyrian she didn't recognize. This one was older, with skin that showed the deep colors of age and wisdom. "I am High Counselor Zethmar. I speak for the entire council when I say that we have learned something important today." The High Counselor's colors shifted to what Elena recognized as deep respect. "We have traveled among the stars for thousands of years. We have met many species, and we have always judged them by how closely their abilities matched our own. This was a mistake." Elena felt a warmth spreading through her chest. After months of being treated as primitive and inferior, it felt good to be recognized for what they were, rather than criticized for what they were not. "But we want to understand more," Zethmar continued. "Your methods today were unlike anything we have ever seen. You used simple tools to accomplish what our advanced technology could not. How is this possible?" Pete Davis stepped forward with a small smile. "It's not magic," he said. "It's just a different way of thinking about problems. You try to control matter by reshaping it. We try to work with matter by understanding its properties and applying force in the right way." "Show us," said Kefter. "Please, we want to learn." Elena looked at her team. They were all tired and dirty, but she could see the pride in their eyes. Okay, she said. But first, we need to understand how your methods work. Maybe we can learn from each other. Over the next hour, Elena watched as humans and Zephyrians worked together for the first time as equals. The Zephyrians demonstrated their molecular manipulation techniques, showing how they could reshape metal at the atomic level. The humans showed how they used leverage, force, and simple tools to move objects that couldn't be reshaped. This is fascinating, said Zexley, the young Zephyrian Elena had met months ago. Your techniques are so direct. You see a problem and you attack it head-on. Sometimes that's the best way, Elena said. But sometimes your way is better. If we had been able to reshape that debris like you normally do, it would have been much easier. But you couldn't reshape it, Zexley pointed out. So you found another way. That's what makes you special. Elena felt a strange emotion. For the first time since arriving on Zephyr Prime, she felt truly accepted. I have a proposal, said High Counselor Zethmar. We would like to establish a permanent partnership between our species. Your methods complement ours perfectly. Together, we could accomplish things that neither of us could do alone. Jake Sullivan looked surprised. You mean you want us to stay? More than that, Zethmar said. We want to learn from each other. We want to build joint projects that use both Zephyrian precision and human strength. We want to explore the galaxy. Together, Elena looked around at the Zephyrians floating nearby. Their skin colors showed excitement and curiosity instead of the disgust and contempt she had grown used to. There's something else, Ambassador Kethter said. We want to apologize to all the humans we have treated poorly. We called your hands crude and primitive. We treated you like children. We were wrong, and we are sorry. Maria Santos wiped her eyes inside her helmet. Thank you, she said. That means a lot. We have already begun designing new projects that will require both our abilities. Zethmar continued. Space stations that need both delicate precision work and heavy construction. Exploration missions to planets with harsh environments that require both molecular manipulation and brute force solutions. Elena felt her heart racing with excitement. This was more than she had ever hoped for when they first arrived on Zephyr Prime. But first, Kethter said with what Elena was learning to recognize as humor, we need to learn the proper way to shake hands. I believe I owe Dr. Martinez a proper greeting. Elena laughed and extended her hand. This time, Kethter didn't recoil. Instead, he carefully wrapped his thin fingers around her human hand. It was awkward and strange, but it was genuine. Your hands are very warm, he said with surprise, and strong. I can feel the power in them. And your hands are amazing, Elena said. I can feel the delicate control you have. It's like holding a master artist's tools. As they shook hands, Elena realized that this moment represented something bigger than just two individuals greeting each other. It represented two species, learning to see past their differences and appreciate each other's unique strengths. So what happens now? Ben Carter asked. Now we work together, Zethmar said. We build things that neither of us could build alone. We solve problems that require both precision and power. We show the galaxy that different kinds of hands can work together to create something beautiful. Elena looked at her own hands one more time. They were still thick and crude compared to Zephyrian appendages. But they were also strong and capable and uniquely human. They had built spaceships and saved lives and opened a door to friendship between species. I think, she said, that's the best outcome we could have asked for. As the humans and Zephyrians began making plans for their future together, Elena felt a deep satisfaction. They had come to Zephyr Prime as representatives of humanity, but they were leaving as partners in something much bigger. The galaxy was vast and full of challenges. That would require all kinds of hands to solve Dot, and for the first time, Elena was excited to see what those hands could accomplish together.